years ago, we started our IT operations management business, which is roughly 20% of our overall revenue out there today, right? And the genesis for ITOM really came from our customers asking us the fact that, hey, ServiceNow, you're running 16 global data centers with 5,000 customers, right? 11 million users. How are you doing performance management, availability management, and automation in your data centers to deliver the high metrics that ServiceNow Cloud gets out there, right? So how do we take that IP and commercialize it? So that's what we did about 4 or 5 years ago, is took a lot of that internally developed IP where we run our own data centers at highly scale, highly performing cloud, and brought that out to the market, right? So my team leads the positioning and making sure our customers get value out of those ITOM solutions. Real quick, we're going to talk about 3 things, right? One is digital transformation. This is sort of a nebulous term out there to a certain degree, right? So I'm going to try to bring some focus to this in terms of how is ServiceNow helping our customers deliver specific experiences and customer engagements from a digital transformation point of view. Secondly, we'll take that theme of digital transformation and apply that to infrastructure and operations, what we all care about as business leaders and IT leaders, and talk about the one key area of focus that every board, every CIO cares about, which is availability of my critical business services. And I'll talk about what we're doing in that space related to AI ops, server ops, service ops, whatever term you want to use. And last but not least, I like to think I'm a technologist, so there's no technologist doing a presentation without some sort of a showcase or demo. So I'll spend a few minutes going through an example of what we're doing with our customers. So let's talk about what our customers are talking to us about, right? What are CIOs really concerned about? The first thing, as we all know, is cost, right? The mantra of doing more with less. The fact that we can drive our procurement, our buying, and our outsourcing agreements to drive down costs is still not enough, right? How does an organization continue to drive down costs? So that's the first big requirement that we're seeing from our CIOs out there. The second one's all around risk. Risk is not just about cyber security, which is top of mind for everyone these days, given what just happened, but more importantly, risk associated with what happens if that critical business service goes down, right? Or what happens if you fail an audit or a compliance scenario? And more importantly, the fines that come with a failed audit, right? So risk is associated with all of those things also. Third one, of course, is around velocity. How do I get more agile, flexible, and deliver the services that my business, my consumers require in a highly iterative, faster manner out to my consumers? But what we're seeing over the last few years, and you've heard the theme throughout the presentation over the last 2 days, is more and more CIOs are really becoming chief digital officers, right? They're worried about the experience to their consumers and the way they're interacting with both internal consumers within the enterprise as well as external consumers that are more revenue generating targets for them, right? And how do they deliver a more intuitive, natural experience to these consumers? And this is the area where ServiceNow is really focused on, is bringing that complexity together to help our customers deliver a more intuitive experience out there. So let's go into this a bit more. Today, why are companies struggling with delivering that experience to their consumers? So as you can see here on the left side, you've got IT incidents, HR cases, customer requests that are being filtered to these various departments for fulfillment. But they're done in a very unstructured, right, spreadsheets, emails, sort of this legacy unstructured format of getting work done in a very non-intuitive manner, right? And the fact that all of these processes are broken, where you have a single request that can span across these various departments being managed through emails, through spreadsheets, through calls, is really helping and hurting our customers in terms of how to deliver a more intuitive experience to the consumers. So let's look at how ServiceNow can help customers overcome this experience challenge, right? I'll spend a few minutes on this and then go into some specific customer examples. The first thing I'd like to call your attention to is the bottom layer here, which is our highly scalable, highly performing cloud infrastructure, where we have 16 global data centers, as I mentioned earlier, right? Multi-instance, which means you as a customer have your own data warehouse as well as your application warehouse completely isolated, secure, highly compliant, right? In terms of performance, availability, and security metrics, we are at the top when it comes to any other SaaS provider, and all of those are published metrics out there. So the first thing I want you to kind of take away from this slide is that highly scalable cloud infrastructure. The next middle layer that you see there are a set of key core capabilities that all of our customers leverage to go deliver services to their consumers, right? And there's three key capabilities I want you to think about and understand in that middle area there. One is the single data model, right? Single service model, single metadata, which means everything we build or potentially buy is completely re-architected on the ServiceNow platform, right? This is unlike most other software companies out there that have a hodgepodge of different technologies that they try to stitch together. We have a mantra that says, no matter what we build or what we buy is going to be built on this single data model, which is super powerful. And coming out of that is the second key point I want you to call your attention to, which is around performance analytics. Once I have that data, now I can start to apply natural machine learning, right? Other analytics engines to that data and start to do things predictive and prescriptive behind that data that we've captured in a single repository. So that's the second layer, the analytics that we drive out of that. And the third one, you'll see a logo up here called Service Portal, which is all about how do we deliver a more UI, UX friendly, intuitive experience using modern technologies like AngularJS and Node.js to be able to deliver an experience to your consumers, leveraging those capabilities that I just talked about, right? So cloud, data model, single user experience, and the analytics all coming together on the same platform. And then the top areas are nothing but use cases. This is where we're going out to the specific department and saying, hey, HR, what's the main use case you want to deliver for your consumer, right? Security, how do you do security incident response? How do we help you with that? IT, how do we help with service management, operation management? So these use cases that are typically siloed but require a cross-functional delivery to be able to deliver an intuitive experience is what those top 5 areas are that we're working with our customers on. So that's the platform that we're delivering together. Now let me share with you a couple of examples of what a digital experience looks like on the ServiceNow platform. All right, the first example I'll take you through is this notion of HR onboarding, right? We are growing leaps and bounds at ServiceNow. Last year we hired 800 people. This year we're hiring 900 people. And the typical onboarding process was anywhere between 4 to 7 business days for a new hire. We've cut that down to about 4 hours. Why? Because when you onboard a new employee, what are the typical things that an employee needs to do? Right? First thing is, I need to get my badge, so I've got to talk to security. Then I have to get a desktop, perhaps, or a location where I'm going to sit, so I need to talk to facilities. Then I have to go get my credentials and my laptop and my phone, so I need to work with IT. Then I have a set of security and compliance trainings that I have to go through, so I have to interact with security. So that workflow that onboarding goes through is what we've automated for various customers, just to share one example of what an enhanced digital experience looks like, whether it's on a mobile, iPad, or even a laptop, right? But you see AJ here, from his day one, he can start to interact with his team, the onboarding paperwork he needs to complete, the security credential, he may even need gym access, right? How do we get him all of those services that he requires, all from the palm of his hand in a very intuitive manner? It's just one example of that end user outcome, that experience piece that we're focused on. The second is take that same life cycle that again cuts across all these functions, right? IT, facilities, HR, security, et cetera, apply that to a student schedule at a university. I've talked to some of the higher ed customers that are out here, and we talked about this problem of a student coming on campus to give us a visit to determine if they want to go to the school or not, filing for an application, applying to that school, going through the advisors and understanding what the back and forth is, eventually getting accepted, enrolling in the class, and starting the entire onboarding process from there. So we work with higher eds, and this is just one example of taking an end-to-end business process and automating that through all of these different functions that would touch different pieces of that business process. And these are just two specific examples. We're happy to share with you probably 15, 20 industry vertical specific example, whether you're in finance, you're in healthcare, you're in manufacturing and retail, of how we've helped customers take a business process and the inefficiencies associated with that process and help you optimize that on the platform. So that was the first piece around digital experience, digital transformation. And yes, it's not the most sexiest when we talk about digital transformation, but this is what enterprises are struggling with every day. And these are the small wins that we're helping them as they move on to bigger and better things in terms of digital transformation. So let me turn that into the infrastructure and operations space that we're all here learning about, right? And there's three things that we're hearing from our customers in terms of what are those business and technical executives struggling with on a day-to-day basis. The first one is all about, how do I understand my service? And help me understand the service context of my critical business services. For example, if I'm a retail bank, this is an example of an actual customer, and I have a global wealth management service that brings in 80% of my revenue, and I get audited on that service every 3 months, how do I understand who the users are using that service? More importantly, what are all of the components that that service is connected to, right? To be able to do things like asset management and change impact analysis and business impact analysis. So the first pain we're hearing from customers that we're helping with is this notion of service visibility. Second one's all around, once I understand what's out there, how do I now start to drive up SLAs and OLAs and reducing my mean time to response and ensuring that availability of those critical business services is there, right? We just got a new CEO at the company who's also on the board of Nike, and I was talking to him, his name is John Donahue, and I said, John, I'm in ITOM, what can you tell me from a board member point of view as to how's ITOM relevant to the board? And he said, Zaki, there's two things every board has unlimited budget for out there. One is availability, and the second is security, right? Every board is maniacally focused on ensuring availability of their services, ensuring that those services are secure. So that's the second piece, which I'm going to get into in a bit more detail. And the third one that we help our customers from a ServiceNow ITOM point of view is this hybrid cloud service intelligence is what we call it, right? Which every executive is coming to us and saying, hey, how do I have a common cloud operating model that does four main things for me? Number one, it helps me deliver service management in a hybrid environment, on-prem and off-prem, right? Which is sort of our bread and butter. How do I take my change templates, my incident templates, and apply them to Amazon as well as to my VMware environment? So that's number one. Number two, how do I get consistent end-to-end cost visibility, cost management across my hybrid environment? Number three, how do I drive governance and compliance of my environment end-to-end, right? Business policies, business rules. And the fourth one is, there's some level of automation that I need to do within my hybrid environment. How does ServiceNow partner with my providers of choice, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, etc., to go drive that automation, right? So this is what we're doing at that bottom layer here. But with that said, let's get into the second piece, which is really around availability and how are we helping customers there. So we've all heard the term AI ops. ServiceNow kind of tagged the term service ops a while back, which I'll talk about in a bit, but the reason this is such a challenging space is because of all of the industry drivers that we're seeing out there in terms of mobile, right? In terms of IoT, in terms of microservices, in terms of the public cloud growth. More importantly, at the infrastructure level, you have this agile, flexible, API-driven infrastructure. And at the application level, you have this horizontally scaled microservices architecture, right? And that's really forcing the traditional operation mindset of command and control to get away from that to more of a sensing and responding world, right? How do I sense and respond to this highly agile, flexible world that's out there? So let's talk about how we're helping customers there. Two main things. One, we're taking our IT champions that are in this operations management silo, right, whether it's network, security, storage, application, and bringing those assets into the service management world. And we're bringing a business context to them. What I mean by that is, if I get an alert on a critical application, I can tell you who the users are, what business service they're connecting to, what's the SLA associated with them, right? What are the typical incident problem changes that are associated with that business service, and bring that world together through discovered CIs, events, and analytics that we're ingesting from other third-party providers. And then the key thing is I can start to predict what changed that actually caused some sort of a performance degradation on that service. And last but not least, I can drive more machine learning algorithms in that data that I've captured, where over time I can start to prescribe and predict, what actually resulted in an outage the last X amount of times, and how do I start to predict that moving forward. So the world of service management and ops management to us is, different sides of the same coin, if you will, where we're making our IT leaders more empowered, more relevant, and a true strategic partner back to the business through bringing service management and ops management together. So let's talk about availability and keep going on that theme. And there's four main things that ServiceNow is really looking at in terms of AI, machine learning, and all of the predictive, prescriptive aspects that we're talking about. And I'll talk about the two on the left here related to availability and what we're doing with our solution set. Right, one is around correlation, and I'll talk about that in a bit, and then prediction. And then the other two that you see on the top, on the extreme right, virtual agent and robotic automation, that's really what we're doing on the intelligent automation engine side within our service management solution, right? Where based on past categories of incident changes and problems, as new ones come into the environment, I can start to auto-remediate those through things like virtual agent technology and robotic automation, right? And we just announced what we call an intelligent automation engine last week at our trade show that had about 15,000 of our more strategic customers there, and I encourage everyone to go read further. But let me get into the correlation and prediction aspect. So we call this operational intelligence. Again, this is all based on machine learning, AI, and there's 5 key things that we're immediately investing in and actually releasing out in the market as we speak. This has been out since January of last year. Dynamic thresholding, I think we all know what that is, right? You have this legacy concept of setting, low and high bars, and how do we do that more in a dynamic manner based on alerts and incidents that have come in the past and the metadata that we've learned from those. Root cause analysis, so doing things like CI, CMDB, root cause analysis based on what's connected to what change is affecting which service, and being able to predict that. Anomaly detection, understanding what's normal and abnormal based on past performance, and being able to predict how an abnormal event is going to turn into potentially a problem or an outage. And that's the predictive service outages piece. And then unsupervised learning, right? Over time, as the engine, as the system gathers more and more of this data, we're learning from it, and we're implying those analytics back into the engine and using unsupervised learning there. One example of that is correlation, right? And this is a perfect example of how a lot of our customers are coming to us and saying, hey, I have 10, 15 monitoring tools today. I've got Splunk, Actonamics, Nagios, Dynatrace, you name it, right? I get tons of events coming in from these systems. Typically, they open up a lot of incidents for me, a lot of noise. How do I start to correlate that? More importantly, the correlation happens at 3 levels, right? CI correlation, CMDB correlation, root cause analysis correlation. And then on top of that, we're applying 2 other machine learning algorithms to it. One is historical data trending. So based on past performance, we can see what impact this is going to have, as well as anomaly detection, what I talked about earlier, right? So this is that alert correlation piece that you see in the middle, where we're able to take your events to alerts to incident and really drive down that ratio. And I'll talk about a few examples of this with specific customers here, as you can see. So take Time Warner, for example. Time Warner had 120,000 events that resulted in almost 90,000 incidents per week, right? We were able to drive that ratio from 120,000 events down to 1,200 incidents per week. Over a 90% reduction in their incident volume, which resulted in, as you know, higher productivity of the help desk, higher productivity of the network store. What we did from there is we helped them understand what each one of those services connected to, top to bottom, and more importantly, anytime there was a change or alert that came in for those services, we were able to predict that change and also see what the response to that change should look like. So let me get into how this all comes together on the ServiceNow platform and how we're actually delivering this solution for our customers out there. So here's the demo part, as I said earlier, right? There's no presentation that we do without a quick view of the environment. So you guys can see here, can you see this in the back? Or as best as possible? Let me expand this out a bit. Better? Okay. So here I have an alert on my phone that says there's a 78% probability that a service outage will occur in the next 30 minutes, right? So as I click into this, I'm intrigued as a user. Let's say I'm a IT operations lead or perhaps director of operations or VP of operations, right? There's three main things I want to understand. Number one, from a user context perspective, this top widget here that you see tells me that my retail point of service will have an outage in the next 30 minutes if I don't do something about it. A bunch of events turn into a bunch of alerts, turn into an incident, and that incident eventually turns into an outage. And if I know that 78 out of 100 times, these sets of incidents have resulted in this outage on this service, I can start to reverse engineer that and understand how a problem or an outage will occur, right? So this first widget gives me that user context in terms of what critical service is affected and how much time do I have. The second one is all about the business impact, right? As I expand that, I can see that there's two business services that are affected by this outage, potential outage. I see the costs associated with it. I see the number of users. If I expand that down and look at that further, I can see the lines of businesses that are affected, the impact to the business, the impact to the users, the number of users affected. So now I have my business context, right? I understand my users that are impacted. Now I understand the business impact of that. The next thing I want to know is the root cause analysis, right? Again, back to machine learning and algorithms, AI ops as we call it. I see the server that's impacted. I can click into that server. I see it's a SQL server, non-compliant, support group. If I want, I can break out of this workflow and go and connect with my support group. Call them, email them, text them, chat with them live. Next, I can look at what caused this issue. So I see it's a change record that caused this issue. In the middle, you see a memory leak. That's a potential issue as well. If I expand that out, I can see the event sources that fed this intelligence to us in terms of AppDynamics, SolarWinds, and other intelligent solutions that everyone has today in their environment. And more importantly, I can see the past 30 days of incidents and problems and changes on that server that may have led to this as well, right? So I can quickly diagnose those. And from there, the system is starting to learn from past patterns in terms of how did we resolve these issues in the past, right? And it's predicting or prescribing 3 specific options for me to go remediate: rollback, fix, and failover. And there's a confidence level associated with each that you can see here. 98% for rollback, 35% for failover. And as we all know, SQL failover is not the most easiest, right? There's a mirror, you have to do some manual work, you have to clean up logs. So therefore, the confidence level is about 35% there. So now as I select rollback, what you can see here is the system is smart enough to say, this change that was implemented has a pre-approved change already. Oops. Okay? So this change that was implemented has a pre-approved change. I see the high-level steps that it will go through. As I click on rollback change, it's going to initiate that change in the back end and initiate what we call workflow, which is all of the policy, the governance that you've described for that system will be adhered to as we go and execute this rollback plan. So as that rollback plan completes, you can see the timeline on the bottom here, right? I've done a synthetic user testing. I've opened and closed a change ticket. So I've done the governance and documentation. I've notified my business owners, my service owners that care about this service. And just as importantly, I've updated my machine learning algorithms. So moving forward, I can learn from this remediation and be able to expedite resolution faster on similar events moving forward. So in closing, here's a key thing I'll leave you with, right? Digital transformation, again, as I said earlier, is sort of this nebulous term, but think about your environment, think about the various use cases that cut across the different functions that you have in your environment, what I call business processes, right? What are those business processes that we can help you efficiently optimize end-to-end as best as possible? We know we can't do 100% automation, and that's what the system of action built on the ServiceNow platform is helping customers deliver, right? A business process that's delivered through the different cross functions out there. So that's the experience piece that we talked about. The platform is there to help you deliver that in a SaaS, highly scalable, highly available model. And last but not least, we're leveraging the intelligence and the data from our partners like AppDynamics and Splunk and others to help you leverage the investments that you've made in the platform and these other solutions and bring that all together to deliver these business services to you, right? So I hope that gave you a quick example of how we're helping customers deliver operational intelligence using things like machine learning and predictive analytics. And if you want to go deeper into a conversation on this topic, please feel free to come by our booth, which is right outside to your left. And I thank you for your time. Appreciate it.